And this is what I love about this business is partnerships. Like, it's very rare to have a lone ranger on there. It's normally a partnership, and I love that. And you mentioned something, John, a second ago. This would have been too heavy of a lift, probably with the amount of due diligence tasks you had to overcome. But also, you guys raised like $1 million on this thing. Was that easy to do, or talk about that?
It wasn't. I would say we had, maybe half of the investors that we have today were kind of somewhat on board. They were like, "Hey, you guys find a deal." We were open and honest and all cards on the table. I think we had won people over because of that. We knew them. When it came down to closing and getting close, yeah, things started getting a little nervous because we were looking at how much money we actually had committed, and we were a bit far from the goal. So we just pushed ahead. We tried a few different things. One of them was we basically set up at a coffee shop for the entire day and just invited our investors, the ones that had expressed interest, to come in. And every 15 minutes we went down and met with a different investor and went through our deal package with them. And we got them. So we got them all on, and they're super happy. We've been paying out distributions according to our plan, and our investors are super happy. And that was our main goal. Was we didn't make a killing on the first deal, right? It was pretty standard deal. We pulled back on our equity split just to make sure that our investors, we want them there next time. And I think that's what that's where we are. When we do have the next deal, we've got some investors that are just like, "Hey, let us know when you got the next one." So very important.
All right, so you had your own investors. Gary, you knew people. John knew people. Then there was a meetup, and it sounds like you put the word out, and you did not immediately raise $1 million.
It wasn't immediate. We were down to the wire. I mean, we had enough to close. I think we needed about half of what we raised just to close. We were there, but we needed the extra for the building did come with some ills. We had planned on renovations. The apartments were, really needed a bunch of work. And we had planned actually to do like 12 of them in the first year, and we're up to 22. A lot of things were related to COVID, right? Because right after we closed, COVID.
Well, I want to get to that in a second, but how did you how did you bridge the gap? Because there's a lot of people are afraid of raising money. Like, my gosh, I got to raise X amount of dollars. What if I can't? Right? I mean, that thought must have crossed your mind. What if I can't? How did you overcome that?
Well, I think the biggest thing was that our meetup was our biggest pot of where we raised our money from. And the issue we had was people said they wanted to be part of it, but getting them to commit was the issue. Yeah. And I think once we, like Gary said, we had a few meetings with people we set up for different weekends, just getting them to sit down and go through it and let them know there's a finish line here and there's a deadline, and to get them to sign off. And it was just getting them to sit down and go through it, and for us to be there and kind of like demand, like, this is the date. If you're not here, you're going to miss out. And we actually had a few people that wanted to be part of it that kind of didn't get there when they should have. They missed out because we raised enough. And now they're coming back and like going, "Man, I know we missed the deal." And they're like all upset about it. But like going, "Well, the next one will be ready for you. Just don't be wishy-washy about it." Right. That was the whole, but I think it was that part of it kind of focused on sitting everybody down and making sure they knew there was a timeline. We had to stick to it. And
so you built some scarcity into that. That would played into it a bit, but then you also, I'm sure you had to get the reps in too. So it was probably a combination of volume, and there were some tactics that went into it. Where were some more of the ways that you got people into the deal when it came down to the wire?
I think a lot of it was just being honest and open. John and I were like, "Listen, if we're not going to take a dime. We're not going to take our return, And another thing is we invested. So we threw in as much money as the largest investor did. So we got skin in the game. It's like, listen, we're here, we're not going anywhere, and I think that meant a lot. Just the sincerity of, our determination. We're not just going to raise money and walk on, and go to the next deal. We're here to make sure this is a success.
I can think of one thing too that we did that, to the investors that were actually investors that came out of the woodwork. We didn't know these guys prior. They came looking for us. They heard about the deal, and but they were definitely more sophisticated and become good friends of ours since then. But what they wanted to do is they wanted to see the property. So we invited them out. We were able to bring them out there before we closed, the owner let us come out there and have them see the property. They walked around, looked at the property, and we knew they were smart enough to understand that there was work. So when they went in there, they weren't going to be, shocked by anything. But I think that was the one thing we'd offered. There was a few people were maybe questioning. We said, if you want to come look to make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into, we're willing to do that, knowing it was a risk. But we knew we had to do it. So that was one of the things we did.
Again, hustle and tenacity, it's paying off. And every entrepreneur, I think, shares that quality, and you guys do as well. Now, you talked earlier about COVID, right? So I think you guys bought this right before it. Did that create any challenges for you?
Sure, it did. So we closed just before, the COVID started really hitting. And the issue that we had was primarily with our property management. We were required do our lender to have this under third property management, which we needed to anyway. The property's an hour and a half from us, so we can't be there all the time. And the property manager was like, hey, we can't even go on site. We can't show units. We can't go in and do repairs. And that, our building. So we had a couple of issues that we uncovered during our due diligence that required us to, we had an issue with asbestos. We had to abate some of the common hallways and whatnot. And that meant our plan was to displace tenants.
Oh, boy.
So we did. And we, fortunately, we were able to do it within an 8-hour window. So we went 4 by 4, half of 4 at a time. And we actually had to have the tenants leave for the entire day. And it was a challenge that we had to face, but we were very successful in getting that done.
John, anything you want to add to that?
Not really. I mean, I think the biggest thing with the property with COVID was that, the thing is for us, we bought a property nearby purposely because we both are hands-on. And I think if we would have bought this property, just say in Texas, neither one of us would have been able to done much to help the property. But being that we were close enough, we were able to go out there because of COVID and be that in between part that needed to be there, to fix those problems or answer a question to a tenant or make sure one thing's getting done that was really important. Because it was so new, we just bought it. Without us doing that, we would have been just hoping,